Isaiah 53 is the most promoted chapter in all of what Christians and Messianics dub the Old Testament, based on Hebrews chapter 8. Out with the old, in with the new. The fact of the matter is, Isaiah 53, listen carefully, does not identify who the servant is. I repeat, Isaiah 53 does not identify who the servant is. Now, Christians and Messianics will spin this and say, well, it explains about the servant and it identifies Jesus based on the description. But that's not what I'm trying to say. So let's not dance around what I just said. Isaiah 53 does not identify clearly and explicitly who the servant is. So therefore, we have to find out where Isaiah tells you who the servant is. Let's take a look. Isaiah 41, chapter 41, verses 8 and 9. But you, Israel, meaning righteous Israel, are my servant, Jacob, whom I've chosen. Descendant of Abraham, my friend, you whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called from the remotest parts and said to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you and not rejected you. Isaiah 43, verse 10. You are my witnesses, plural, not singular. Plural, declares Yeshua, and my servant. So we have the plural, witnesses, and my servant, singular. Isaiah 44, verses 1 through 2. But now listen, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I've chosen. Thus says Yeshua, who made you and formed you from the womb, who will help you. Do not fear, O Jacob, my servant. Isaiah 44, verse 21. Remember these things, O Jacob and Israel, for you are my servant. I have formed you. You are my servant, O Israel. You will not be forgotten by me. Isaiah 45, verse 4. For the sake of Jacob, my servant, and Israel, my chosen one, I have called you by your name. Isaiah 48, verse 20. Go forth out of Babylon, flee from Kasdim with a voice of singing. Declare, tell this, say it even to the ends of the earth. Say, Yeshua has redeemed his servant, Jacob. Isaiah 49, verse 3. And said to me, you are my servant, Israel, in whom I will be glorified. Other places where it mentions the servant of God in Isaiah, it's Isaiah 54, chapter 54, verse 17. I hope you'll write all this down. Isaiah 63, verse 17. Isaiah chapter 65, verses 8 and 9. And then also verses 13 through 15 of chapter 65. And then we have Isaiah chapter 66, verse 14. Now, elsewhere in the Hebrew Scriptures, where we have the similar identification, is it just Isaiah? No. Jeremiah chapter 30, verses 10 through 11. But as for you, do not fear the word of Yeshua, my servant Jacob. Do not be afraid, O Israel. For see, I am saving you from a distant place, and your descendants from the land of their captivity, and Jacob will return. Jeremiah chapter 46, verses 27 through 28. But as for you, do not be afraid, my servant Jacob. Do not be disheartened, O Israel. For see, I am saving you from a distant land, and your offspring from the land of their captivity. Deuteronomy, back in the Torah, Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 36 and verse 43, it says, For Yeshua will vindicate his people and have compassion upon his servants, plural, when he sees that their strength is gone, and there is none remaining, bond or free. O nations, sing the praises of his people. Not his Messiah, not his son, his people. For he will avenge the blood of his servants, plural, plural, plural. We also see similar passages, write these down, in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 42 and verse 55, in Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 25, we see it in 1 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 13, Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 10 through 11, Psalms chapter 79, verse 10, Psalms chapter 135, verse 1. Many passages, and that's just a handful. There's a lot more. Now, what are the objections? The objections where the Christians and Messianics go, wait a minute. Let's not deal with Isaiah, the previous chapters, and so on. Isaiah 53 says singular. His, him, singular, singular, singular. Okay? It's singular. Isaiah 50, some people will say that. Isaiah 53 is unique. Okay? It doesn't matter what the rest of Isaiah says. Isaiah 53 is unique. Let's take a look at the response that I'm going to give to that. Again, Isaiah 43, verse 10. You are my witnesses, plural, says Yehovah, and my servant, singular. So we have the plural and the singular. Exodus chapter 4, verse 22. And you shall say unto Pharaoh, this is God speaking to Moshe, what to say to Pharaoh. For thus says Yehovah, Israel is my son. He doesn't say Israel are my children, plural. It's singular. Israel is my son, my firstborn. Hosea chapter 8, verse 3. Israel has rejected the good. The enemy will pursue him, singular. Hosea chapter 11, verse 1. When Israel was a child, singular, then I loved him, singular, and called my son, not my children, my son, out of Egypt, singular, singular, singular. Hosea chapter 14, verses 5 through 6. Listen carefully. And he, meaning Israel, will be like the dew. He will blossom like the lily, and he will take root like the cedars of Lebanon. His shoots will sprout. His splendor will be like the olive tree, and his fragrance like the cedars of Lebanon. Psalms chapter 130, verse 8. And he will redeem Israel from all his sins. Jeremiah chapter 48, verse 27. Now was Israel a laughing stock to you, or was he caught among thieves? For each time you speak about him, you shook your head in scorn. Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 19. And I shall bring Israel back to his pasture, and he will graze in the Carmel and the Bashan, and his desire will be satisfied in the hill country of Ephraim and Gilead. Exodus chapter 19, verse 2. When they set out to Rephidim, they came into the wilderness. You hear the plural, right? Of Sinai, and camped in the wilderness. And there he, Israel, encamped in front of the mountain. It goes from plural to singular, back and forth. Exodus chapter 1, verses 10 through 12. Pharaoh says regarding the Jewish people, come, let us deal wisely with him. Him. Usually it's translated them, but it's not true. The Hebrew says he. Lest he increase. And if there be a war, he will join our enemies and fight against us. Singular, singular, singular. And go up from the land. So they appointed taskmasters over him. Again, this portion in Christian Bibles are usually translated as them. But it's not, it's him. To afflict him with hard labor. And he built for Pharaoh storage cities, Pithom and Ramesses. But the more they afflicted him, the more he spread out, so that they were in dread of the sons of Israel. So we see all over the place, Israel is described in the singular. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 8 through 13. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of man, he set the boundaries of the people according to the numbers of the sons of Israel. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the allotment of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land. And in the howling waste of the wilderness, he encircled him. He cared for him. He guarded him as a pupil of his eye. Like an eagle that stirs up his nest, that hovers above its young, he spread out his wings and caught them. See, singular, plural, singular. He carried them on his pinions. Yehovah alone guided him, and there was no foreign god with him. He made him ride on the high places of the earth, and he ate the produce of the field. And he made him suck honey from the rock and oil from the flinty rock. There are many, many more passages that reflect the singular for the body of Israel, just like the Torah itself. When described as a whole, it is the Torah, not the Torot, the Torah, which contains all the elements contained within the Torah. Israel is always referred to as the singular as well as the plural.